Hello and welcome to the presentation of Epicor HCM. The purpose of today's presentation is just to give you an idea of the look and feel of the product and some of the basic navigation. What we're looking at here is an example of the internal landing page. And the internal landing page is where all of your employees and managers and HR managers will come to log into the system. Everything you see here, from the components on the right to the logo in the upper left-hand corner, is completely configurable by the administrator of the system. This means you can change the color scheme, the images, and the content. The important piece here is the login in the upper left-hand corner. The login is where the security will take place in the system. So as I log in as the administrator, it's going to know who I am and validate the different roles I have with the organization, and also look at the rows of data I'm able to access. So as the administrator of the system, I'm going to have access to all of the content in the system, from all of the reports to all of the people. The first thing we see when I log in is a pop-up item. And this is just an example of some routing in the system, and it just means there's something out there awaiting my action. I'm going to go ahead and say no to that for now. You'll notice that I've landed here on the home page. And the home page is really my launch pad into the rest of the system. So it's going to contain a series of dashboards and components that I'm able to organize on my own and choose from based upon my security, and will allow me to navigate the system quite efficiently. The first component I have is My Open Tasks. And this is essentially a draft feature here in the system. It allows me to pick up on projects that I didn't get a chance to complete. And those projects will live above the database level so that I can easily go back to them, click the link, and finish that process by clicking Submit, and then it will submit to the database or to the route. And the routing in the system can be individual, so it can go from employee to manager, or we can have multiple approval steps in place, and we can also put conditional logic into these routes. So if this, then that, and it will route accordingly. Below that, I have my to-do list. And my to-do list is really a place to consolidate my tasks in the system. I can certainly come here and add my own to-do, maybe something outside of any of our internal processes, just to have on my to-do list. But they're also going to appear based upon internal processes. And we can see that I have a Create 90-Day Goals for Angela Archer and her onboarding process. You will notice that this displays here as a link. If I were to click this link, it would bring me to the section of the product to create 90-day goals, particularly for Angela Archer. And if I look over here to the right, where I have the checklist dashboard, we can see that I'm also the owner of this process. So I can see that we're about 44% done with onboarding Angela. If I hover over this, we can then see that there are 9 steps in the process, and the first 4 have been completed. And I can also drill into this and take some action. And what you'll notice here is that Harold Singleton is our network administrator, and he's already turned on the access. The next few tasks are for Angela, who's the new hire, and she's working her way through each of those. Step 6, however, is highlighted in red, which indicates that it is overdue. So instead of walking down the hall and getting in touch with James Arts, who's the hiring manager, I can go ahead and I can just click here on the little arrow, and maybe I can reassign this step if James happens to be out of the office, or send him a quick email, or maybe just add it to his calendar for tomorrow at, say, 11:30. And I can do all of that right here from my dashboard. And these internal process checklists are auto-generated. So in the case of onboarding, we were hiring Angela into a position, and when we clicked Submit on that task, we then triggered this checklist, which sent notifications out to everybody whom was involved. So I'll go ahead and close out of there, and we'll return back over here to my to-do list. The 9th step on that checklist was to create the 90-day goals, and that one belongs to me. But I may also see alerts pop up here in my to-do list. So if I had an employee with an expiring certification or license or upcoming review or open enrollment, that could all be displayed here under my to-do list, and each of those items are going to have an envelope on the far right side that allows me to add that to my master calendar. Maybe it's my Outlook calendar. That way I can consolidate all of my tasks into one place. Now down below that, I have my favorites. And my favorites is a way for me to navigate the system to places that I frequently go. And you'll notice that there's a set of vertical pins followed by a set of horizontal pins. And the horizontal pins are sort of learning as I go, because every time I go to a new place in the system, it's going to appear here as a horizontal pin, which is also a link to that area of the system. Now the vertical pins, I've pushed them here, and they're always going to remain here, and they're also going to follow me throughout the system. So if I ever need to use one of them, I just click on the link, and it's going to bring me to that functional area of the system. And you'll see here I have some ACA reports out there and some checklists, as well as a couple different ways to report on some information. But down below, I actually have a few reporting dashboards. So I have employee absences by day of the week, and I have a 2-month snapshot of that. Now, based upon my security, it's showing me results for the entire organization. But you can certainly point these reports to the security. So, for instance, the HR manager may only see the HR team, or the marketing manager may only see the marketing team. But if I scroll down a little bit further, you can also see that I have a report that is pointed here at the HR team, and it's the absence accrued cost by department. So just by scrolling down, I can see all of my team members, see what plans they are enrolled in, as well as the absence balances they have in those plans, and maybe most importantly, the accrued cost the organization is holding against those balances. It's just a complementary report to the one I have above. Now we can also do some reporting here from our home page. And one of the pinned items I had was a salary analysis by department. So if I were to click on this, it would bring me to the screen for this canned report. And we'll just use an effective date of today. And you can see that I can choose a department, or I can leave it blank for all departments. I'll go ahead and just run that report. And what we're going to see here is a bar chart of all of my departments going across the bottom and all of my salaries going up the left side. I notice that the warehouse is a little bit lower here. I can hover over it and get a total value, or I can drill into it and see the people who make up that value, who they report to, as well as what position they hold. So that was the warehouse, but if I jump back out here, I can also see that we have finance and accounting, and I can drill into that, see those folks, see their supervisors, and their positions. And now this is a canned report in the system, so it's just a click of a button. I put in the date parameters. But maybe I wanted to alter this a little bit and just see those two departments and maybe see that in a particular company. I can just jump right back to my home page here, and what I have pinned is another report builder, this time our analysis services. There's several of these in the system, and this one's just focused on current employees, hence the name current. And I can go ahead and just open that up, and it's going to take those tables and push them into a spreadsheet or an OLAP cube here for me, where I can do a little bit of reporting on a high level. So we were just looking at annual salary. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. But now I want to slice that up a little bit, and I'm going to do that in a couple of ways. I'm going to grab company. We do have 3 companies here in our database. I'm going to focus on just one of them, just universal services. I also want to see it by department, but again, we didn't want to see all of the departments. We just wanted to see the finance team and the warehouse team. So now I've shortened that up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and insert this into a quick pie chart and continue to work with it from here. So I'll make this a little bit larger. And now we can see our 2 departments and their salaries, and if I hover over them, I get those total values. but I wanted to see this a couple of different ways. So I want to now add one more field to this, and I'll just grab gender here. And in gender, I'm going to clean that up, and I'm going to say I just want to see our female workforce, and I also want to include the engineering team. Go ahead and say OK. So what I'm doing here is working with some aggregate information from our database, and it's just allowing me to expand a little bit on that first report. Of course, I can go ahead and toggle back and see a different value for just our male workforce and see how that changes a little bit, and hover over that and get those total values. So that's one of the ways we can expand upon reporting, and of course doing that right from our home page. I'll go ahead and close out of here, and we'll resume with the home page. Over on the right-hand side of my home page is our answer to manager self-service. So I'm logged in today as Kenneth Pulse, and if I click the arrow next to Kenneth's name, I can see his team appear here in bold. So James, Debbie, Kimberly, and Sandra all report directly into Kenneth. And I can go ahead and just drill on James here and see his team beneath him, or I can just click on any of them and be able to work with them here from my home page. So I clicked on Sandra, and it's giving me a summary of her contact information, which is going to allow me to get a picture of what she does here, and also allow me to jump into any task that my security allows for. And you can see there's quite a few of these. So in the interest of efficiency, I can just slide over here, and I can grab any task that has been previously pinned to the My Favorites component we looked at a few moments ago. So I'm just interested in a snapshot here of Sandra. So I'm going to grab the View Employee History. And it's going to take me and Sandra and bring us into the task for View Employee History. And at the top here, I can see whom I'm working with, their employee number, and their status. And I can also get kind of a snapshot here of where she's located, who she reports to, and what her schedule is. But then as I scroll down, what we're going to see is really just sort of the instances of change for certain aspects of this employee's profile. So it's not all the detail we're housing, more of the topical information you may need to reference. And what's very nice about this task is that it's very manager-friendly, because you'll notice there's no way for me to edit this information. This is a read-only task. It's here for my reference. And if I scroll down, I can see all the absences she's taken this year, had one just a few days ago, all the status changes she's had, different jobs she may have held with the organization, location she's worked at, base pay changes, so again, instances of change to her base pay, and then also other pay, so things that were outside of her base. If I scroll a bit further, we can see her most recent performance appraisals, we can see her scores or her ratings. Scroll down a little bit further, we'll get into notes and projects and disciplinary actions. And as I go further, we're going to get a little bit more granular here and see things about this employee, their certifications and licenses, their competencies and skills, their education levels and training courses. And anything you may see here that you wouldn't track or may not use, we can go ahead and remove that from the view and have this be a nice, neat screen of just things you're tracking. But what's really great about this is I came in here, and maybe we are thinking about giving Sandra a pay increase, or maybe she's considering transferring to a different department or a different location. I can initiate that workflow right from here by just clicking on More and then finding My Favorites. And one of my favorites is the Enter a Personnel Action task. And when we go ahead and grab it from here, it's going to know we want to do it for Sandra Childers. I click OK, and it launches me into that task. Now again, I'm going to make a request with this task, but the routing process is how it gets approved. So I'm going to go ahead and make an effective date of today, and then I get a chance to build out this workflow. So in this case, we're considering a transfer that may result in a salary change as well as a job change. And as I made these selections, I built those tabs across the top. So we don't need to use areas here of the personnel action that we're not interested in at this time. And like any workflow in Epicor HCM, I can go ahead and click on the next tab or work my way down and use the wizard button. And what we're going to find here is the current values that pertain to Sandra Childers, in this case, her location and transfer history, so just the most current record. And then on the right-hand side where it says new, what I'm proposing. And what I'm proposing here is going to be a lateral transfer. And that transfer will be from Denver to Chicago and from Mountain Time to Central Time. So I don't need to touch anything else here. I updated the fields I needed to. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the next step in this workflow, which again is going to be the result of a transfer. And this time, I'm going to suggest a pay increase. And I can just go ahead and put in something like 4%, tab out of there. It'll calculate 4% and update my request. But we also have some breaks in here. So if I were to do something out of the norm, like 54%, we're going to get a little note saying this is outside of the pay grade or pay range for her position. So we'll go right back here to 4%. Moving on to the last tab, it's going to be the job change. And maybe she's going to move from the accounting manager 2 position into something like the accounting supervisor position. I could certainly do that. It's going to update the fields and update that salary range. And then I can go ahead and submit this request, which is going to go back to all the people in the approval process and just show them the things that I'm requesting. If at the end of the day, everyone feels that is a appropriate request, it will submit to the database and take effect based upon the effective date I entered. So that's an example of working with manager self-service and initiating a workflow for one of our employees. The last item I want to touch upon here is just some of the recruiting views. Now, I mentioned when we first logged in that that was the internal landing page. There's also an external landing page designed specifically for applicants who can come to our site, search for open positions, create profiles, fill out applications, and all of that information will then funnel back here into our HCM database. Now, I'm going to go ahead and rearrange my home page to get a better view as a recruiter. If I go ahead and click here on the Customize button, I can now move things around with the drag and drop field. And I can also choose from a list of dashboards and components that are within my security. And there's several dozen of them. I'm going to go ahead and put in my requisition or my recruiter requisition dashboard, put it at the top of my screen, click OK, close on out of here, and I will have taken off my manager hat for a moment and put on my recruiting hat just to get an idea of where things stand with the organization and our open positions. So I can see by hovering over these items that we have 30 open requisitions, and we received 4 new applications last night. We also entered 2 new evaluation notes, which we define as a touch point with this candidate. So maybe it was an email correspondence or a phone interview. And the idea here is all these touch points are going to funnel again into a central repository so everyone involved in the recruiting process can see the notes from the other people involved in the recruiting process. And if I hover down just one more here, we can see we actually did make an offer today. Now I can toggle a few ways here. I can see just internal applicants, just open requisitions, and just ones that are assigned to me. We also have the ability to create some advanced filters. So based upon employment type or requested pay or when date parameters of when these applications came in, I can use those over here. Or I can just toggle to the back. And I can see the 4 new applications I just received and maybe review this candidate's information or how they filled out the application questions, or dive right on into their resume and then forward that on to one of my peers. But let's jump back here to the home page. I'm just going to take a peek at the account manager requisition. So if I click on the eye here, it's going to show me all of our candidates that have applied and the different statuses that they are in the recruiting process. So some are new, some have been reviewed, others we're considering hiring. And with all of them, I can go ahead and click on the actions, and I can enter a new evaluation note if I just spoke to them, or I could send them a quick email correspondence, or I could go ahead and schedule an evaluation for this candidate and somebody else in our organization. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to review resumes. And when I get to review resumes, you'll see it's still focused here on the candidate I was working with, and I can see he's applied for 2 positions, and I can expand upon that. See the resume, see the cover letters, the transcript they may have attached, and now I have more action items I can follow. So I can go ahead and look into their qualifications or forward this on to the hiring manager who's been assigned. But I can also just go ahead and remove their name from up here and click search again, and now I'm going to see all of our requisitions, and I can go ahead and look at all of those same people who we saw from the dashboard, but now in the review resumes where I have a little bit more functionality. And if I decided, maybe we wanted to close out one of these requisitions, I could go ahead and just make a change. So we've moved them to a closed status. I can just click Save, at which point it's going to ask me, on my other monitor there, ask me if I want to send them an email. And in this case, I just grabbed 1 candidate, but if I had grabbed 5 of them, it would populate all 5 of them at once, and I can let them know that the position has been filled, and it'll fill out the email with their information. But another tool I can use when I'm going through the recruiting process is I can query our database for both internal and external skills. If we go back down to my favorites here, we'll see that I have a skill search pinned to my favorites. And if I click on that, this is going to give me a good way to look at what we have in-house as well as from candidates. And you'll see I just checked both candidates and employees here at the top, and I could also isolate a location. Now there are 2 types of search I can do. I can do a job qualification search, or I can do a person qualification search. And I'm going to do them in order so we can see how they work. For job qualifications, what we're going to do is grab a job that we offer in our organization, because in the building blocks of the system, we have job descriptions. And if I go ahead and just grab the account manager here, I'm going to search that for a combination of certifications, competencies or skills, training programs that we've created and they've completed, as well as training courses and language abilities. If I go ahead and say generate the report, the first thing we will see is a summary of this position, the account manager, and we can see there's 1 license and 3 competencies and 1 training course desired here. If I scroll down, I can see all the people who have at least 1 match based on that job description. And Debbie Brown and Kimberly Chandler here actually each have 2. I can see next to each name the letters in the brackets. E stands for employee, C stands for candidate, and EC stands for internal candidate. So I can drill in here and I can see where Debbie Brown matched and maybe where she didn't. I can also dive into maybe communicating with her or communicating to the whole group of people that match. Or I can go a little bit further into her qualifications or her training history or return to that view employee history we looked at a few moments ago. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to modify this search. So I'll go back to modify. We're going to go to a person qualification. And because we first did a job qualification, you'll see it pulls that 1 license and those 3 competencies back into my search, and I can go ahead and add something new. Maybe we're looking to see if we have anybody who is skilled in the account manager, but also has some counseling in their background. I can go ahead and search for licenses. So I'll just go ahead and look for a licensed professional counselor, and maybe I'll look for a similar substance abuse and addiction counseling. And I can go ahead and now run this search, or run this report, and it's going to show me the folks who match that, now 8 criteria. And we have a new person on top here, which is Sandra Childers. I'm going to go ahead and expand here on Sandra and see where she matches. And in fact, she matched best on the 2 new criteria I added. So from here, I'm looking to maybe drill a little bit deeper into her other qualifications. So by doing this, we're going to take Sandra with us again, and we're going to see her work history all the way through all of those components we saw on the View Employee History task. But of course, my interest here was licenses and certifications, so I can drill in on that. And over here on the left, we can see all of our historic licenses that she has, and I can go ahead and select them and get more detail. If I go to competencies and proficiencies, we're going to note whether or not these are current or historic competencies. And in this case, all three of them have the lightning bolt, which lets me know that they are current records and she's currently active to use these competencies. I can go ahead and close on out of here. And when I do, I will return back to my home page where I can resume working with my candidates. And that is all we wanted to get through today, just an idea of the navigation of the system and some of the functional capabilities. And certainly, we will produce more of these videos on certain functional areas like recruiting and employee self-service and performance management. So thank you very much for your time. We look forward to hearing from you.